I hate doing this. I hate to write. I hate to read. I hate journals. I especially hate English, where teachers only talk about idiot symbols. I hate the idiot poem about the snowy woods, and I hate it when people say the woods symbolize death or beauty or any other thing you want. I hate that. Maybe the woods are just woods. Beth Ann stood up. Mr. Berkway, she said, I do hate school. I do hate books. I do hate English. I do hate symbols, and I most especially hate these idiot journals. There was a hush in the room. Mr. Berkway stared at Beth Ann for a minute, and in that minute I was reminded of Mrs. Cadaver. For that brief time, his eyes looked just like hers. I was afraid that he was going to strangle Beth Ann, but then he smiled, and his eyes became friendly, enormous cow eyes once again. I think he hypnotized her because Beth Ann sat down slowly. Mr. Berkway said, Beth Ann, I know exactly how you feel. Exactly. I love this passage. You do? She said. It's so honest. I had to admit you couldn't get more honest than Beth Ann telling her English teacher that she hated symbols and English and idiot journals. Mr. Berkway said, I used to feel exactly like this. I could not understand what all the fuss was about symbols. He rummaged around his desk. I want to show you something. He was pulling papers out and flinging them around. Finally, he held up a picture. Ah, here it is. Dynamite. What is this? He asked Ben. Ben said, It's a vase, obviously. Mr. Berkway held the drawing in front of Beth Ann, who looked as if she might cry. Mr. Berkway said, Beth Ann, what do you see? A little tear dropped down her cheek. It's okay, Beth Ann. What do you see? I don't see any idiot vase, she said. I see two people. They're looking right at each other. Right, Mr. Berkway said. Bravo. I'm right? Bravo? Ben said, Huh? Two people? I was thinking the same thing myself. What two people? Mr. Berkway said to Ben, and you were right too. Bravo. He asked everyone else, how many see a vase? About half the class raised their hands. And how many see two faces? The rest of the class raised their hands. Then Mr. Berkway pointed out how you could see both. If you looked at only the white part in the center, you could see the vase. If you looked at the dark parts on the side, you could see two profiles of faces. The curvy sides of the vase became the outline of the two heads facing each other. Mr. Berkway said the drawing was a bit like symbols. Maybe the artist only intended to draw a vase, and maybe some people look at this picture and see only that vase, and that's fine. But if some people look at it and see faces, what's wrong with that? It is faces to that person who's looking at it. And what's even more magnificent, you might see both. Beth Ann said, two for your money. Isn't it interesting, Mr. Berkway said, to find both? Isn't it interesting to discover that snowy woods could be death and beauty? Wow, literature. I thought Mr. Berkway was finished with the journals for that day, but he made a great show of closing his eyes and pulling something from near the bottom of the stack. She popped the blackberries into her mouth. Then she looked all around. It was mine. I could hardly bear it. She took 2 steps up to the maple tree, threw her arms around it, and kissed it. People were giggling. I thought I could detect a small dark stain as from a blackberry kiss. Ben looked at me from across the room. After Mr. Berkway read about my mother's blackberry kiss, he read about how I kissed the tree and how I've kissed all different kinds of trees since then, and how each tree has a special taste of its own, and mixed in with that taste is the taste of blackberries. By now, because both Ben and Phoebe were staring at me, everyone else stared too. She kisses trees? Megan said. I might have died right then and there if Mr. Berkway had not immediately picked up another journal. He stabbed his finger into the middle of the page and read, I am very concerned about Mrs. Mr. Berkway stared down at the page. He looked again as if he couldn't read the handwriting. He stared again. I am very concerned about Mrs. Corpse. Her suspicious behavior suggests that she has murdered her own husband. Phoebe's eyes blinked rapidly. Go on, Ben said. Finish. You could tell that Mr. Berkway was regretting that he had ever started this business with the journals. But all around the room, people were shouting, Yes, finish! So he reluctantly continued. I believe she has buried him in her backyard. When the bell rang, people went berserk. Wow, a murder! Who wrote that? And is it real? I was out of that room faster than anything, chasing after Phoebe. Megan called out after me, You kiss trees? I tore out of the building. No Phoebe. Idiot journals, I thought. Gall darn idiot journals.